Hi, and welcome to another installment of the Predix Developer Video Guides. I am Jason Delancey, a developer evangelist, and I am joined by a special guest today, but I'm just going to let you introduce yourself.
Sure. I'm SIVA Balan. I'm a senior staff performance engineer with the Predix platform security team. Part of my job description, one of the main things I do is monitor a lot of services that I work with, especially the security services. And it's very critical for making sure the in production, when these services are run in production, they are, first of all, making sure that it runs within our SLAs, and then it alerts us if the SLAs are breached. So monitoring is a very key component of this. And one of the tools that we rely on for monitoring is New Relic, which is built into the platform for us to use. And because we use a Cloud Foundry platform, it's very easy to integrate monitoring tools like New Relic or any monitoring tool like AppDynamics or any of the tools that's available which can be built into Cloud Foundry.
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about New Relic. So how would I, as a developer coming on the platform, use it? Do I come with my own account, or can you provision an account for me?
It's very simple. So if you are, as a developer, or onboarding your application on Predix, the first thing you do is to get a license from New Relic.
Okay, so I go to newrelic.com.
Exactly. Go to newrelic.com, sign up for an account, get a license. Once you get your license, you bring your license key, and you create what's called a user provision service or user provided service. We call it the cups in Cloud Foundry. Use that to create the service instance of New Relic using that license key. Once you do that, you're in business. So you'll have your application in the New Relic console, log in with your account, and you're good to go for monitoring and anything else that you want to do it. So, yeah.
And I can tie that together with individual services that I create as well as my application?
Absolutely, yes. It doesn't matter whether it's a service or an app. It works with all flavors of applications that are pushed into Cloud Foundry. And it also supports various programming languages like Java, or if your app is a Golang app or it's a Node.js app, it monitors all kinds of different apps.
And it's just like an agent that runs,
yes,
right?
Exactly. Okay. So what happens is when you push your app to Cloud Foundry, it goes and grabs the agent that's responsible for monitoring your application. If it's a Go application, grab the Go agent. If it's a Java application, it grabs the Java agent, downloads it to the container where your app is running. It starts collecting the metrics and pushes it out to New Relic for you to monitor.
Okay, so what are some of the metrics that are collected, or what might be interesting?
Sure. So I work mostly with Java applications. So let me talk about Java applications. So in case of Java applications, key things that we monitor are, to start with, of course, you need the response times for the various transactions that your service is providing to the users. And then we monitor the throughput to see how many requests are coming in. Then we monitor a host of other Java virtual machine parameters like your heap size, how big your meta space, how it's being used, what's the number of threads that your applications are using, how many number of instances are running. We also monitor a bunch of key CPU and memory utilization of the container in which your application is running. So together, it gives us a very good picture of how healthy your application or services are running, and it also makes sure that it runs without any hiccups.
Okay, so that all makes sense. But let's say I start getting an alert. How do I start going about investigating a problem?
Let me show you what I typically do if there's, let's say, a production alert that comes out. So this is a New Relic dashboard. This is how it looks like. Okay. So here it shows the response time. It shows here the throughput. It tells me how much requests are coming in, and here it gives me the list of transactions that are running. So this gives me a good picture of what's happening. So right now, there are no errors, which is good. So there's no error rate is 0. Then I go look at the JVMs to see how healthy the JVMs are. I look at how the heap is behaving. It gives me a good indication of a very nice garbage collection pattern. It also tells me that there's pretty decent full garbage collection happening at good intervals here, and there's a good scab and GCs happening as well. So these all tells me that there's the application right now was running perfectly fine. If there is a problem, I would see issues all over the place here. So it's easy to go, look at where the problem is for me.
Okay, and so that gives me an idea of application health. But what if there's some errors that are being reported and I needed to investigate those? Is there anything in the catalog that would help me kind of say, like, what's going on here? I need more visibility. It's often a data center somewhere.
Yes, so one thing I forgot to mention that whenever you deploy an app or service, never forget to bind your app to Logstash.
Okay.
Or your monitoring service. So you have to have one monitoring service, you don't have one logging application, which is Logstash, which you have in your catalog.
Okay.
So what Logstash does is essentially is a syslog drain that drains your output of application logs into Elasticsearch, and it gives you a nice Kibana UI to visualize the logs that are available for you.
How do I digest that information?
Sure.
From
So the way I would do that is first bind your application to Logstash.
Yeah.
And what it does is it automatically starts draining your logs into Elasticsearch. Now, the way to visualize it is to use a Kibana application, which is a UI application.
How do I set up Kibana?
Sure. So Kibana is available as an open source application, and there is a plugin available for Kibana as well. So you download the plugin and you install it as part of your CF CLI. I think it's called Kibana Me plugin.
Okay.
And once you have that, you push your Kibana app, and it goes and binds to your Logstash instance.
Okay.
Once it does that, it knows to collect or visualize the data from your Elasticsearch instance that's bound to your Logstash, and it gives you a URL, a very nice URL to work with. So once it goes, if you do a CFENV of your app where your Logstash is bound, it'll give you the URL of the Kibana.
And what does that look like if I follow that URL?
Sure. So if the URL would look, if you follow the URL, you would see something similar to this here. So this is a Kibana UI. So what you see here is the amount of logs that is generated over, I think this says about a day. So it's about 24 hours worth of logging data that you see here.
Okay.
And you can see on a per minute basis how many logs gets generated. And you can actually, it's very easy to search. For example, if you want to search for a particular error. So let's look at something, if something error came up here. So we'll just search for error. And there you go. So you have some errors at around this time frame. There's some time frame. So if you have certain exceptions that you're specifically interested in, like out of memory exception, you can search for that string, and it brings up when the error comes up, and you can actually drill down. You can go and zoom in. It's very easy to zoom in. All you do is select that particular area. It shows you what the errors are, and you can start digging into what caused the problem for you.
Okay, so that gives me some suggestions about performance, monitoring, and just making sure the application's healthy. If there are problems, this gives me a nice view into what's maybe going on. What else you got?
Sure.
What other things come up in production?
Yeah, so many times what happens is it's not just your service that's causing a problem. So because we use the microservice model, each microservice essentially has to talk to other microservices for you to get a good sense of what an application is. So an application typically works with 3 or 4 microservices. If you're going to deploy an app, your app has to have a security, which you probably want to bind to UAA or ACS, and then you probably want to store your data in Postgres, and then you will probably want to do a Logstash, and then you bind your app. So there's a whole bunch of services that interact together. For me, the source of truth has always been the monitoring tool for me. So you have to make sure that the monitoring tool that you set up is capable of monitoring the entire stack of your application, starting from your UI to a middleware to the backend and any other services. And New Relic actually does a very good job of doing that, mainly because it's able to detect what services are bound to your application automatically. So you can actually drill down. If my application is calling UAA, I can actually go and say, when I open up my application New Relic console, it actually gives you, let me show you a good example of what I mean by that. So this is a service, it's an ACS service that's actually talking to UAA.
Okay.
So now, if I go to service maps, it actually tells me what different services my application is bound to. So for example, it's ACS here is actually talking to Redis. It's talking to Postgres. So now I can actually go and drill down into Postgres and Redis to figure out if there is a problem. So let's say if there is some queries that are taking a long time, I know that there is a Postgres instance that's running that. It's easy for me to drill down.
Okay, well that's great. So let's say we are starting to see some performance trends, and I really want to maybe dive into my application, see what kind of performance tuning and things I can do, because it's in a distributed environment that's not as straightforward as just running some local tools.
Sure.
But maybe there's something that can help me. What would you recommend?
Sure. So the tool that we use is JMeter. It's open source, Apache license, anybody can use it. And the way we built our performance testing framework is that we have a bunch of scripts for each of the services that we run. We have JMeter scripts that generate a predetermined set of load for a particular service. And what we do is we have a job in Jenkins which would automatically pull the data or pull this latest source code at the end of the day. It compiles it, builds it, pushes it to Cloud Foundry on a testing environment. It starts running the test against it.
Okay, and it's been a while since I've looked at JMeter. Are you just hitting particular endpoints, or are you interacting it through, sort of simulating browser usage, or what kind of, how are the tests actually structured, or how do I get?
Sure, there are multiple ways to do it. So JMeter is able, so because we are working mostly with microservices, which doesn't have a UI, it's mostly REST endpoints. So we configure the REST endpoints. We make sure that the test environment is loaded with some predetermined data.
And do you run through all the tests, or do you kind of differentiate almost unit
We
or
have
per
to run
service,
through all the workflows that our service advertises. So if a service has, say, 10 REST endpoints, a couple of puts and posts and deletes, so we run through every one of them, making sure, because you never know where the problem might crop up.
And as a best practice, that's something
Exactly.
I should do myself too. If I'm developing services as part of my application setup.
Exactly.
Okay.
And you also want to make sure that if your service is bound to a Postgres database, you want to make sure that you have some seeded data in it so that you can simulate, because your performance is going to vary if your database has one record versus has a million records.
Yeah.
So if you're expecting your service to have millions of records in it, so you want to make sure that the database is loaded with a million records before you actually run your tests. So you know the true performance of your app or your service when it's actually working with a million records versus one record with a brand new database.
Well, thank you so much for your time, SIVA. That was our Predicts Developer Guide, taking a look at performance monitoring of applications, how to do some debugging and looking through log files, and the best some strategies and tools that we can use for doing some performance monitoring of our own individual applications. So I appreciate your time. We have a few more interesting topics coming up, so stay tuned for the next one.